From insects utilizing the burrows to mice species, rat species, amphibian species, snake species. Even when storms come in, a lot of bird species dive down the burrows, gaining cover. We've captured skunks coming out of burrows. Animals use them to raise offspring. They use them to escape forest fire. They use them to escape predators. They use them to overwinter during the colder months. They use them to hunt. The list goes on and on. I mean, when you lose that burrow to an ecosystem, every single species in that ecosystem is affected one way or another.
Gopher Games does an exceptional job of making the argument for the protection of the gopher tortoises. And it's supported not just by scientific fact, but also legal support. I mean, the ways that these things filter out and reverberate onto much larger issues, systemic within our political systems, both federally and state by state, is really quite staggering. And how the protection of such a small animal might seem innocuous, but really has significant impact and consequences to the environment in a larger way. That's the incredible takeaway of this piece, is how they understand that these small parts of our ecosystem are telling a much larger story. And if we're not careful, that story's going to have a bad ending.
Gopher Games. I am so ashamed that I'm born in Florida, born and raised, and I had never heard of the gopher tortoise. I'm so sorry. So I'm really, really glad that the filmmakers did this film, because what an amazing creature. I loved getting a chance to listen to the interviews, and it really drove a lot of things home, because being from Florida, I've seen a lot of the development and how all of our natural resources are being consumed by larger businesses and shopping malls and all of that. And it's affecting the ecosystem with everything, including the gopher tortoise. So yeah, I loved the interviews, wonderful cinematography, great film. The way that they did this, it was educational, and yeah, thank you. Thank you for introducing me to a species in my home state that I was unaware of that we had. So yeah, I appreciate that.
Gopher Games. I thought this was really heartbreaking, but I think that was intentional. And I think that was the best way to kind of get their message across of this is the very real thing that is happening to these tortoises, and this is why it's happening, and it is just as horrific as you think it is, with, you know, them kind of getting entombed, and, you know, how once that's happened, it's too late. There's nothing you can really do, and the very real impact that they're having. And then they went on to then explain exactly kind of how that situation has happened, and the very, very real realities of developing, and the way that developing has kind of gone about, and how it's not even that they necessarily had a problem, like previously had a problem with relocating the tortoises or anything like that, but when you look at the numbers and you look at the facts of how much space that they were, you know, kept making that territory smaller and smaller and smaller, that they were able to kind of relocate the tortoises to. I think when you look at it in terms of like percentages and how much that kind of space got kind of eaten into over the years, it really does show you just how big of an impact the developments have had on their ecosystem. And I think that a lot of the times we hear about things when they're already at the kind of endangered place, and I think that this is a great kind of way to go about, like, why do we wait until they're endangered before we step in and try and do something when it could potentially be too late, because, you know, once they're already on that kind of endangered list, like there's no telling if, you know, whatever we do to prevent them from getting any more endangered, or prevent that from, you know, them being endangered or extinct, you know, completely, there's no way of saying that whatever efforts we put in are going to be successful. So I think that this is a great kind of way to approach it, of why do we wait for that to happen? Why don't we do something beforehand, before it gets to that kind of level, especially when we know that their environments are being endangered. We know that these things are happening. Let's do a little bit more preventative work. I think it's a great concept and it's a great idea, and this is a great film to get that message out there. And also it just raises so much awareness, especially for like a animal that has a long lifespan and that, you know, maybe doesn't get the kind of recognition that it should, because especially in a state like Florida, there's tons of other kind of natural animals that I think probably get more face time because they're flashier. And so I think it's really, really important, but also the way that they presented all the information really just put it out there in a very, very stark, bald terms that are easy to understand, but also kind of hit you in the face, but in a good kind of wake-up call.
This documentary, Gopher Games, is about a population of turtles that's being affected by the growing population and increase in pollution. In this, they talk about how, while population is a huge factor in the health of the turtles, there are many factors that affect them. The biggest problem is the loss of habitat. These turtles are a big indicator of environmental health, and with increasing population and more infrastructure being built, they're pushed to smaller areas. It's really sad to hear how much these turtles suffer from these environmental factors, and developments, especially hearing about entombment and how awful it is for them. But I love that in the end they tie it all up with talking about ways that we can help, and that we can help make an impact and bringing this inspiration back to the topic.